Welcome back to Developer Innovation Day. I'm A.M. Grabelny, a developer advocate here at AWS. We're coming at you all day with all the stuff that you want to know as a developer on AWS. I've got a lot of guests over here, a cadre of new friends that we're going to talk to about Code Catalyst, amongst some other things too. Yep. Harry, you want to kick off intros?
Sure. My name is Harry Maurer. I'm the general manager for our, I guess we're calling it DevOps services these days. Okay. And I've got two of my product folks with me here today. Doug, Kyle, want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Doug Kloss. I'm a product manager here at AWS.
And Kyle Seaman, also a product manager with Harry's team.
All right, now, Doug and Kyle, we're going to get back to you when it's time for the demo, which I'm sure everybody's really excited for too. But we're going to take a little bit of a detour. We take you on a trip, so to speak. We're going to talk through, there's a lot of DevOps tools already existing in AWS, Harry, right? Yeah. So why Code Catalyst and why now?
Sure. So let me take a step. Let me explain what Code Catalyst is, and then we can get into where it fits in the overall portfolio and why we built it. So Code Catalyst is an integrated DevOps solution for any team that wants to go from planning to deployment in one seamless experience, right? And so we built this specifically to make it easy for you to come to AWS, start a developer project, pick from a number of different blueprints, and easily get going, but then have a place for you to collaborate with your team. So very important, like a lot of things get you started easy at AWS. This gets you started easy and puts you in a place where you can work with others and actually build real products, right? And so the question is, well, where does this fit into the overall portfolio of what we have,
We've got a bunch of stuff.
Right. So my team also, we do the code services, which we've had for a while. So if you're familiar with things like code commit or code pipeline, code build, they've been around for a while. And they work really great for our customers who want to build their own tool chains, right? So if you want a building block service like you use EC2 or S3 today as part of your overall solution, that's where those services come in. So if you're a customer who wants to build for whatever reason, say you've got a highly regulated industry that you work in, or you feel like your tool chain somehow gives you a competitive differentiation, and you want to build your own experiences, we provide a really great way for you to do that in the code services because they're secure, scalable APIs that are built to be consumed as part of a solution. Yeah, right. I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of customers use our code services, but a lot of our other services use our code services. So if you use Amplify, which we've talked a lot about today, that uses code build under the covers. If you use SageMaker, that actually uses code pipeline. So these are great examples of how customers use the code services today, right? And one thing to talk about too is they fit into an overall portfolio of a lot of different dev tools that we offer here at AWS. Yeah. So whether you're talking about Cloud9 that helps you edit and debug your code, or like I said, the code services that we talk about, as well as things like CDK, that help you do your infrastructure as code much more easily. This fits into that overall landscape. But I think what we're going to mostly talk about today is the sort of that middle area, and that's where Code Catalyst really fits in. Right?
You mentioned collaboration too, which I think is a huge part of Code Catalyst from what I've seen. And believe it or not, Harry, once upon a time, I shipped code. I promise. I've got the receipts. Yeah. But what I learned, and to quote in the immortal words of Depeche Mode, people are people, so why should it be? You and I get along so awfully. Right? And that's kind of the dynamic that I've faced personally in the past between the ops team and the team that I said on the dev team, right? Getting all of my just beautifully, wonderfully written code with no bugs into production always had some friction, right, in the past. Yep. And I see tools like the ones that we've got on screen right now obviously impacting that, but I also see Code Catalyst impacting that collaboration and making these teams more seamless too.
Yep. Yep, it does, and I think it actually starts with some of the. So I'll take you on a journey too. Yes. So some of the problems that happen when you use building block services like the code services manifests itself into some of the collaboration issues that you have that you're talking about, because it's a really you have a really desperate set of developer tools that you're trying to work across, right? And so there's some challenges with a building block approach or a building your own custom tool chain that we talk about. One is setting up a project and integrating all the tools so that when you're working, say, in your source code, and then you want to move to your CI/CD process, it's all connected, and so that one person can easily see what the other person's doing, how they all work together, and that takes a lot of time and effort to build something like that. And customers do it today, but we see that it takes time, and a lot of the time that effort could go into things like fixing issues for customers or new features, right? The other thing is automatically creating the automation. Right, so one of the things that when you talk about DevOps is enabling developers and operations people to work together, but a lot of times it's also enabling developers to do more. And the way we do that here at Amazon is we automate a lot of things, right?
Automation all the way down.
All the way down, right? So whether that's automating the creation of a dev desktop through automation of deploying your services, that's what we want to do. But we also want to go a next step and actually generate the automation stuff. So as part of using Code Catalyst, when you use a blueprint, one of the things people think it is, oh, it's just going to give me the sample code or a sample application. It really doesn't. It gives you everything that your team needs, including the CI/CD pipelines automatically generated for you for that type of application and the environments you're going to use, right? So again, that makes the collaboration a lot easier. Everyone's working off the same pipelines. They know how things are going to work. And then finally, there's just the challenges around building complex applications and, which constellation of services should I use? How should we work on these together? And one of the things we're trying to do with blueprints is standardize a lot of that. So Doug and Kyle will show you demos of how we use these things. Today, Code Catalyst has about 16 different blueprints that get you started in the right way we call well-architected solutions. And we're going to be expanding this capability too, but this is another way it helps you collaborate. And then once you get into the experience of Code Catalyst, you talk about all the things that it does, we have a place for you to collaborate around work items. So we have issue planning for the first time, offering something like that through AWS.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Our code collaboration tools for code reviews. We'll talk about how we integrate things like Code Whisperer and automatically generate your development environment so that everyone's sort of working off the same dev environment.
Which is key. I mean, I'm actually facing a problem right now where we're not using Code Catalyst, actually, so, our fault. But yeah, the build server image is different than the environment that I'm building on locally, and I'm already running into issues when I try and push, So
Exactly.
it is very common, and then you got chat agreeing with you too. Setup problem, real story, right, from chat. So, I mean, this is something that we all face as devs. You come into a workplace, you have to set up your dev environment, and it could take weeks.
Yep, it can take weeks, and it can be inconsistent. And what you want is a lot of different ones, because as we know, if you're working in a company today, you're probably going to be working across a bunch of different projects with a bunch of different technology. And so if you're going from a Java project to a Python project to a Node project, you hope that you can get your one laptop all set up to get them working on all those different projects, or not, right? So, and then also making sure it's consistent with the testing environment and the production environment, and avoiding that it works on my laptop problem.
So I've never said that.
No, neither have I. No, none of us.
Never said that.
And so we're trying to avoid a lot of this again, I go back to blueprints a lot, but it's really about having this idea of a project that pulls all of this information together, that defines all the environments, whether it's your local desktop dev environment, which we've now put in the cloud, or your testing environment, your pre-prod environments. They all work off the same infrastructure as code definition. We spin them all up in an ephemeral way, so whether as you're building your software, as you're debugging your software. And we just make that really, really easy as part of the experience.
I mean, this is where we all want to be, but getting there on our own is sometimes challenging, especially for a company that maybe their day-to-day isn't software. Like that's not where they're building their value. They have value somewhere else, but they deal in software, right? Yep. Like getting all of these things set up, like infrastructure as code and deployments, and deploying from a certain brand, all of this is set up, right?
Yeah, it's all automatic. Exactly. So we wanted to provide a way for customers to come up and automatically create those types of projects and start working through it. And I could keep talking about all the features probably all day, but it's probably better to show.
Yes, yes, I'm with you.
Let's pull Kyle and Doug back into this. And you guys want to walk through some of the demos?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start at the Code Catalyst space. So this is an existing space that I have. You can see there's already some projects. The space is where you store your projects, defines your AWS region, and it allows for collaboration. So we're going to start by creating a new project, and we're going to build a customer service a backend to track our customers. You have a couple options when you're creating a project. You can start from scratch. You can also bring in your own code, so you can connect to GitHub repository, link it to a new project, keep your code in GitHub, but benefit from the workflows and issues and all the other integrations in Code Catalyst. And lastly, as Harry's mentioned, you can start with a blueprint. So a blueprint is, you can think of it like a template or source code examples if those gave you everything to build, run, and deploy real applications on AWS. So think of them as giving you everything your team needs to actually iterate and keep going, not just get you started. So that includes source code, source repositories, CI/CD pipelines that are pre-configured for build and deploy, as well as dev environments. We've built 16 blueprints initially, really focused on the popular architectures around serverless and container, as well as some of, as Harry mentioned, our more popular well-architected designs and AWS solutions, like intelligent document processing or video on demand. For the demo today, let's look for a Java example. We've been building more with containers lately, and we see here we've got a Java API using AWS Fargate, which seems like a pretty good option. So clicking into this one, we'll see the README for this. It's a Spring Boot Java REST API using Amazon ECS with Fargate. And what's really great about this blueprint is also using the new AWS Copilot, which is the new CLI that really simplifies working with ECS, Fargate, as well as App Runner. So this is integrated in the blueprint. You don't have to be an expert on it. It's going to give it to you out of the box. And then you can extend it from there. This blueprint's also going to include a sample architecture that has inside of a VPC with a load balancer, running some containers in Fargate, and connected to a Dynamo table. So it's great for our use case of setting up a customer infrastructure. It also defines a CI/CD pipeline, which we'll take a look at, and some AWS resources. So with that, we can go in and actually start configuring the blueprint. Blueprints are dynamic in that, based on your preferences or configurations, they're not templates. They actually generate the code for your use case based on the blueprint definitions. So we'll give this one a name, customer backend. And then we can take a peek at the code, which as I mentioned will be generated here based on the project configuration we're doing. So this is pulling this up, and what we'll see here is the first code. So we've got the source files as we would expect. This is a Java app. There's a main file and test. We see Copilot definitions. And we also see Code Catalyst with a workflow definition, which we'll take a look at in a second. The last step, which is optional, but I'm going to do it, is connect this to an AWS account. I'm actually going to choose my personal AWS account, which has been associated with this space. And the last thing I need to do is add an IAM role to give permissions for Code Catalyst to deploy resources into that account. So with a single click, I'm brought into the AWS Management Console. I have two options. I can create a developer role, or I can add an existing role. I'm going to use a developer role because it gives me a lot of flexibility with working across different blueprints. And when I move this to production, I'll plan to scope that role down.
Just to clarify too, Kyle, that's a role that is for Code Catalyst, not for your Fargate service.
That's right. This is an IAM role that gives Code Catalyst permission to talk to Fargate.
Cool.
Yeah, so what's really cool about this is this has now been added to Code Catalyst in a single click. We're regenerating the project. And what it's going to do is actually add those credentials to the workflow. And it's following best practices. So we're going to get credentials on run. They're not long-lived credentials. And you didn't have to deal with any of this back and forth of credential management. That's handled for you. So it's it's not an exciting perk, but it's really important because if it goes wrong, it's not great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exciting to me.
Quality of life thing, yeah. Yeah, so now we create the project, and what this is doing is taking that generated code, adding it to the source repository of the project. It's actually going to kick off the first workflow, and then invite the other members of the space in. I can also invite other members directly to this project using just an email if I wanted to. So yeah, so now we're in the project. We see the README for the repository with instructions on how to get this up and running locally, how to start testing this, and really start working with this, because this is a full functioning app. It's not just sample code. We'll also see that there's a workflow that's been kicked off, and then we have space for pull requests, dev environments, issues, which as we start using this product will start to populate. So let's take a look at that workflow. As I mentioned, it was configured by the blueprint. It's pretty straightforward, good out-of-the-box one where it's linked to the main branch. It has a build step and then a deploy step. It's running the build one now, and then ultimately we'll deploy into the AWS account. This is the visual editor, but you can hop into the YAML, and you'll see there's a trigger that says on push to main, run it, which is why I was running with the initial commit. We have a build action that's actually defining all of those Copilot steps. So this is great if you want to learn Copilot. You can come in and look at this. You can start extending this yourself. And then that action's outputting a CloudFormation template and using our CloudFormation deploy action to put that into the associated AWS account. And as I mentioned, using those credentials from that IAM role. Yeah, so this is going to run for a few minutes and it will deploy. But let's go take a look at some of the other stuff in the project. So this created a source repository. A really cool thing about Code Catalyst is you can have multiple source repositories in a single project. This did a single one. And you can see the code was brought in as we expected. We've got our README. as well as the code. And so let's go investigate this. If you look into source, digging into the main, we'll go into the customer repository, which is really where the public functions are for this blueprint. And we'll look at a small change we could make. So we'll open up the customer repository file. This is defined in the blueprint, and we can see it's got the public functions for really the CRUD operations. But it also has a companion test file. So we'll take a quick look at that as well. And so what the tests are doing is really mapping to the CRUD operations, making sure that sanity checking this. But it's also going further. It's setting up a local Dynamo table
Oh, yeah.
with credentials. It's creating like everything that's
got
like
some mocks
really,
there.
really annoying. It comes with mocks and everything set up for local
Wow.
testing, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a great, again, you can take this as you go further, or you can just use this out of the box. So it has 4 tests, and what we'll look at here is this is a pretty good start, and we'll show you a quick example of what it's like to extend a blueprint. So this one, if we look at the model, the customer table in the blueprint has, I think it's a pretty standard layout. It's got ID, name, account number, registration date, things you would expect. Easily extensible, but a really good starting point. And so a good example here, what we're going to do is we'll add a new function that actually returns all customers sorted by when they registered. Seems like a useful API to have. So instead of me doing that, what I'm going to do is go check out our issue feature. So every Code Catalyst project comes integrated with a Kanban board issue board. You've got a backlog. You've got custom views, so you can run your roadmap. You can create swim lanes for doing sprint management or daily stand-ups. A lot of flexibility. This is obviously a new project, but we'll go and create a single issue. So this probably the least exciting part of the demo is I'm going to write out an issue right now. But we'll say sort customers by registration date and give it a simple instructions, which is add a public function to return the customers from that Dynamo table. And then basically, helpful for whoever's picking this up, I'll add the directory where it's going to be located. And then probably just as important is we're going to call it to also add a test, because as we saw that this is a test-driven unit test style blueprint. So we'll add instructions to make sure that there's a test with at least 2 customers. And I think this should be enough that Doug can actually deliver on this issue without too much instruction.
Not a
I
problem.
can tell you are a PM, Kyle.
Correct.
The way that you're writing.
I've gotten to where I am through delegation, yes.
As an engineer, I would have just written 3 words and then closed the
Just wait
issue.
till he writes the whole user story.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So this is probably a medium priority given that. And then, what's nice, we support labels and all the things you would expect. This becomes really helpful as you start building out your sets of issues. So as I mentioned, I'm going to assign this to Doug. And with that, I'm going to step back. I've showed you what it's like to create a project using a blueprint. Quickly see what you get from that. Doug's going to give you a quick look at what it's like to actually build and collaborate on Code Catalyst.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Kyle. So I'm getting my day started here. Going to log into Code Catalyst. I'm going to log in with my builder ID. Again, builder IDs, you get started with just an email and a password. And think of it like your personal identity on AWS. These builder IDs are used throughout Code Catalyst as the auth method here. So once I get logged in, I'm going to go to the same space Kyle was working out of. So I'll navigate to our Initech space. And then we've been working on a number of projects in here, but I know I've got to work on the customer backend today, so I'll go to the customer backend. And I'm going to start right where he left off. I'm going to check out the Kanban board and see what I should be working on today. And of course, there's that issue Kyle just wrote. So I will look at writing this function to sort by registration date, and then also write the test that adds 2 users and then validates that the sort function's working properly. So pretty simple, looks good to me. I'm going to move this to in progress, and I'm going to get started coding. So I'm going to navigate over to the software repository now, and I've got a couple ways I could get started, right? One way is use that clone repository button up there. I could clone it locally and start working on it, but before I could do that, I'd actually have to make sure I have all the right dependencies installed, and I actually don't have Java on my machine. So today, I'm actually going to use one of my favorite features of Code Catalyst, the Code Catalyst dev environments. Think of a dev environment like a cloud-based IDE. It's going to give me everything I need to get started working on this project in just a couple of clicks here. So we've got dev environments with multiple different IDEs. Here I could use Cloud9 if I wanted to do it in browser. I could use VS Code, or I could use multiple of the JetBrains IDEs. VS Code is going to be my choice today, so I'll go ahead and select that.
I'm not biased, but that's a great choice.
It's a great choice.
Yeah. So.
And then I have the option here to work in the main branch. I don't want to do that either. So I'll actually create a new branch off of this. So it'll create a branch, and then it'll launch my dev environment on that branch. I'm going to create a feature branch here. give it a name. I could change other things if I wanted a more powerful machine, for example, changing the compute type. But again, these all look pretty good to me, so I'm just going to go ahead and create this dev environment.
No, you always max it out.
And what this is going to do is it's going to launch that new dev environment instance in the cloud. It's going to clone my repo. It's going to install all the dependencies that I need to work on this particular project. And then it's going to launch VS Code locally on my machine, which you're seeing here. It's going to SSH from my machine back into that cloud-based machine, or the dev environment in the cloud that already has everything up and running that I need to work on, which is going to do all my heavy lifting. And what's great about this, again, I don't have Java on my machine. I don't have to worry about deconflicting potential dependencies with other projects I'm working on. And also, these are software defined. And so every developer that comes in here is going to get this exact same setup so that we make sure that we're all working and
I
everything.
definitely haven't spent an entire afternoon setting the Java environment variables.
Exactly.
Never.
Yeah.
So
And so like I said,
the works on my machine problem that you're fixing. here.
exactly. So let's just check to make sure that Java got installed, because we know we're using it for this Java API project, and of course it did, so we've got the versions there. You can see I got the repo cloned on the left-hand side there, ready to go. And as Kyle mentioned, we're using some test-driven development on this project. So now this README file actually has some handy commands that I can just copy and paste to set up that local version of DynamoDB running that Docker image. So I'm just going to copy those out, and I'm going to paste the commands in. And again, this is going to launch a local version that I can then run all the tests on to make sure I've got a healthy repo before I actually start making any changes.
Local to your dev environment.
Yeah, exactly. So when I say local here, again, remember everything is running on a cloud machine of my dev environment. OK, so that's all set up. I'm going to run the Maven test to actually go through and run all of the tests, and just to make sure we're healthy prior to getting started here. And I'm going to navigate. I know I've got a couple files to go change. Kyle already pointed them out, but I've got that customer repository test. This is where I'm going to insert the new test function that's going to test that sorting. Again, this is currently doing tests on the CRUD command, so create, read, update, delete. And I'm also going to open up the customer repository file. This is where I'll actually put my function to do the sorting itself. So we'll give it just a few more seconds here to make sure our tests are in good shape, and then we'll be off and running. There we go. So all 4 tests, create, read, update, and delete, look like they all worked. So we know we're healthy. So now it's time to write some code. But instead of actually writing code, I'm just going to write comments, and I'm going to work with Code Whisperer to actually write the code for me.
Nice.
I'm not a good developer either. So
Hey, what do you mean either? Wait,
you already said it.
To me.
I was wondering why we had PMs doing coding days.
So I'm going to do a quick authentication with Code Whisperer. I've got to give it access to my code. I actually authenticated with my builder ID, if you saw that. And then you're going to see I've got Code Whisperer ready to start giving me suggestions. So I get to write comments. So you can trust me here. It'll work out just fine. Yeah. So I'm going to navigate back over to the source code. I got Code Whisperer all set up, ready to go. And let's go to that customer repository file and start writing that function out. And again, when I say that, I really mean write the comment. So I'm going to add a comment here that Code Whisperer is going to pick up and ask it to write a function, or a public function, that finds all the customers, sorts them by the registration date, and then returns the list.
You could have cut and pasted that right out of the issue.
I probably could have done almost
Such
that.
a thoughtfully written issue.
Yeah. And for this, I actually don't want to write the function. So even though Code Whisperer just gave it to me, I want to return an empty array list, because again, I want to make sure I get the test working first, and I make sure our test philosophy here of developing this is kept sound. So
The test philosophy of delete all the tests.
exactly.
Okay, perfect.
So I got my skeleton function now. I've got an empty function basically that's doing the sort. So now I went to the test file, and I'm actually going to write another comment to ask for a test now that will create 2 users with different registration dates, and then validate that new function that we just got the signature for is actually working correctly, and it sorts them. Again, we won't expect it to work this time, but these are Code Whisperer again making suggestions. It suggested test find all sorted by reg date. Again, that signature looks great, and then it wrote an entire test function for us.
And added it as a 5th test in the stack.
Yeah, and realized that it should be 5th. And let's see what it's going to do. So it's going to create 2 customers, as we said. It's going to artificially set the registration date of the second customer to be before, so minus a second. Save them both to a repository, and then it's going to call our function to get them sorted. And then we're going to look at an assert to see if customer 2 is now first in the list, and customer 1 goes second. So let's go ahead and run our test again. Again, we should get a 5th test here, and we're expecting it to fail, given that our function actually is currently just returning an empty array list. So as this goes through, we will see that there it failed. So we got 5 tests to run, so it picked up our new test, perfect. And if we scroll up to find the actual error, the error is on our test find all sorted by reg date. So again, perfect. This is exactly what we wanted, exactly what we're expecting. So now we can actually, now that we got the plumbing in place and the tests are all running properly, now we can go finish out that function. So I'll go back to the customer repository file. I'm going to delete that array list. And now I'm going to queue Code Whisperer again to give me a suggestion. If you watch it real quick here, it's going to give me 2 suggestions. I take the first one really quickly because it looked good to me. The first suggestion here, find all. So it's grabbing all the customers, putting them in a list. And then it's going to call a sort function on those customers, and it's using a compare to of the reg dates. So again, this looks like it's going to work to me and returns the list. So I'm expecting now that running this test, we're going to get a successful.
And you can even go into the Code Whisperer panel and see where they got that code from,
Correct.
the source of that, which is really handy if you do have licensing considerations.
Yep.
You didn't make any modification to the code. Code Whisperer just.
It didn't touch it.
didn't
Yep.
touch it.
So
You got your
perfect. So ran 5 tests. 5 tests succeeded. So I'm done. I wrote 2 comments and I got all the code written for me, which is perfect for me. So now let's go stage these changes. I'm going to commit them and then I'm going to push them back into Code Catalyst into that feature branch that I created. So I'll do the commit here. I'm going to do the push then, and you'll notice at no point did I set any Git credentials, right? Who likes setting Git credentials? Not me. Code Catalyst already has me authenticated, knows who I am, so I'm just going to be able to push these right back to that development branch, go back to Code Catalyst. I'll navigate to that development branch I stood up, my feature branch, and I will see my commits. So go to my feature branch. The commits are on this page as well, but I navigated to them with that commit. I can check it out to make sure it's what I expected. And again, just a minute ago, D. Clausen, that's me, perfect. So let's open that up. Make sure that the diffs are what we thought we were going to get, and that's correct. We got 2 new functions. That's exactly what we wrote. So now I'm ready to actually create a pull request, right? My work here is done. So I'm going to create a pull request, and I'm going to pick my feature branch as my source branch. I'm going to pick the main branch as the destination branch. I'm going to make Kyle be the reviewer here for my pull request, since he's the one that asked for it. And then I'm going to link the issue so that I have all the details about what we were asking for and keeping that chain of custody throughout this. Give it a quick title. I'm going to leave the description blank because, again, I've already got all the details in the issue. Again, Kyle was very verbose there and giving me a nice issue to work with. Check my one more time just to ensure that I've got my commits proper. I don't want to make a mistake there.
You mean you don't do the anxiety dance of
perfect.
checking 5 different times?
Exactly.
Different browsers.
I only checked it twice.
Totally not what I do either.
Yeah, so the pull request is created. So now Kyle's going to get a notification because he's got his email tied to Code Catalyst. It's going to ask him to go review this particular pull request. Once he approves it, it's going to then merge that into the main branch. The workflow will kick off, and we will then have our production application redeployed, and people could start using our new sort by registration date. So in this short demo here, we were able to show you starting a project from a blueprint. Kyle was able to get a Java API using DynamoDB and Fargate. We got that deployed really quickly. Then we were able to collaborate through the issues. Right? Kyle created an issue. I picked that issue up. Then I used the dev environment, walked through, made some code changes with Code Whisperer, committed those back, made the PR. Ultimately, when that gets reviewed, it'll end up pushing that back to our production application. So again, to get started with this, if you want to try it out, codecatalyst.aws. We're really excited to hear from people. I always enjoy hearing on what you guys are building. So let us know what you're building and what's working and what you'd like to see us do in the future. And thanks for the time today.
All right. Now, a lot to like there. A lot to like, a lot to unpack, too. We've got, chat was very active. So I've got a list of questions that I was not ignoring you all. I got you. First off, I got to ask about the blueprints. Are they Progen based, or do they support Progen based templates?
They
Or
are
based on a
Progen
different-
based.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're super excited about that. That was a inside deep
That's a
cut
good question.
reference. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Long and short, they are. We're super excited about that, and whoever knows what Progen is sees the kind of potential that the blueprints have for us. So we're starting out with these templates, but for those who don't know, Progen's a really kind of abstracted, strongly typed way to make sure that whether it's your license format, Lambda versions, package formats are enforced outside of the package.json file or something.
It's actually probably good to know someone asked a question like that. We were debating how to name blueprints, right? Because you give it a name like a blueprint, it seems like a static template,
Right.
and they're anything but static, right? They're actually TypeScript applications that run. After you pick all the selections in the drop-down boxes, you hit that button. We actually run a TypeScript application in the background that generates everything, right? And so that's why it's ProGen based, right? And ProGen, it's all written on. It's really an extension of CDK as well. But these are actually mini applications that generate everything. And so one of the things we're looking to do, we should probably maybe talk a little about the roadmap as we go forward. We're going to start to introduce a number of features that allow people to create their own blueprints. And these actually being little TypeScript applications, I can't wait to see what people are going to do with it because they're very powerful.
Yeah, I was going to say that you could do a ton there.
Yes,
Because it's code, right?
It's
Like,
code, and
whatever
and you
you
can
want,
integrate any other type of dependency. I mean, you're running an application, so if you wanted to tie in other things as you generate your projects, there's just a ton of stuff we can do with this.
That's amazing. And one of the things I wanted to call out too, I didn't want to step on the demo at all, but specifically in the Fargate blueprint with the Java API, using Copilot.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like that's such a great usage there.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we just launched that this last week. We went to production, and we worked closely with that team. And where we see blueprints as this opportunity is to like learn this new tech in a way. Like Harry has the canonical story of wanting to learn ML on the weekend.
Yeah. Before you get into it, there's a couple of different Copilots out there. So can you
There
see
is.
what?
Can you
see what Copilot is?
AWS Copilot,
AWS Copilot.
which is an ECS app runner,
CLI,
Fargate,
Yeah.
and it makes it
tool.
really nice to manage your containers and run your containers. Yes, so it's the
Good
AWS
call.
Copilot.
Yes. Got to shout out our AWS hero, Mike Fiddler, who does a ton of work on AWS Copilot. He's,
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool.
Friend of the show, been on AWS Honor, been on a couple shows I do. I love the guy. He was in chat earlier. I don't know if he's still there, but
Awesome.
Good dude.
shout out. That's a great example too of our community adding back to the open source tools that we build.
Yep.
I can give
awesome.
there's other call outs
Please.
there for the community builders, and the
Yeah.
heroes have been excellent in helping us, understand what more features do they want to see, and we've had some great relationships with them. So kudos to all you guys, and thanks for the help.
So, not a question necessarily, but you mentioned roadmap. I'll give you all a little data point here from one of our chatters. If you could do a blueprint for Flutter, you'll be my hero. So just keep in mind, use definitions and pop up a dev environment for Flutter, a dream.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
Good to know.
just do with that what you will. I know we love customer feedback. We also had a question. In our org, we like to tie an issue to a branch so that we can see all the changes made for that issue. Is there an automatic way to do that, or could you do it through the pull request comments?
You want to take that, Doug?
Actually, go ahead. I don't know. Yeah.
Someone answer.
It's there in the demo that Doug showed. The way we do it right now is through the pull request. One of the ways that we are going to evolve this space though. One of the key things. It might be good to pull back some history here. We have another product that was sort of similar to this. It's called CodeStar. Still out there today, people use it. It was really great at getting started, but it didn't really help you keep going. It lacked sort of the underlying foundation of connecting everything.
I remember
right?
CodeStar.
Yeah, I love it fondly.
Yeah.
But it really missed the connective tissue part, and we built Code Catalyst from the ground up to have that. And so while those features, you don't see them present today, our goal is that you will have full visibility from idea all the way through deployment through a really complex graph of data that we hold for you underneath, and you'll be able to do those things automatically.
I love it. Again, not so much questions. I know we're running short on time here, but I wanted you all to hear some of the positive stuff that chat's saying too. This tool is going to be a huge time saver and productivity boost.
Awesome.
It's got to be nice to hear. One that I wholeheartedly, I feel this deep in my heart. The efficiency of not dealing with Git credentials or environment setup is huge.
Yeah.
I often fight with Git because we have multiple different, I do stuff with open source, I do stuff with internal, I do stuff with, code commit in my own AWS account. Setting up all those different Git credentials, it's not fun.
Yep.
So,
And also getting your machine set up right, and keeping it set up Yeah.
Yeah.
My machine has never been set up right,
That's
Doug, and I've just embraced it.
How many times you said this? Because it works on my machine. Yeah.
Never. I already said never. Never said that, and never will, because it doesn't even work on my machine. So. Anyway, thank you all three of you, for coming on the show. This has been incredible. I mean, any parting words? Obviously, go try
Go
it.
try it,
right?
yeah.
We've got a big feedback button. Feel free to use it.
Yes.
Go to codecatalyst.aws. It's its own URL. Go there, sign up, give us the feedback. There's a big button. Try it out. We hope you get as much benefit as we do out of it.
Awesome. And this isn't the only Code Catalyst segment we're doing today. You're going to be hearing a lot more about Code Catalyst for the rest of the day. So stick around for more, and we will be right back.